There are a million reasons why the Sixers season has seemingly gone off the rails already, and Tyrese Maxey is far from the top of the list. However, as the season hits its halfway point, it's impossible not to notice how the up-and-coming star seems to be carrying himself in a little bit of a different way this season. I want to talk about why I think that may be the case and how it is directly impacting his level of play on the floor, and why this exact expression right here has become all too familiar of a sight for Tyrese Maxey. Now, I get the frustrations from Tyrese, and I think there's a lot of different reasons from where this boils, and a lot of reasons why we're seeing this. That for starters, losing sucks for everyone. And for Tyrese Maxey specifically, that he's been pretty open about, this is the most that he has lost in his entire life, even dating back to his AAU days, his college days, his high school days, that the start to the season that the Sixers are currently still working to climb themselves out of is difficult on everyone. To take that a step further, he more or less has been at the forefront of being let down by his teammates with Joel Embiid and with Paul George. That Tyrese Maxey, while I understand he was handed the contract, and that certainly changes things, and I do want to circle back to this point, the reality is he's not expected to be the number one option on a night-by-night basis. Joel Embiid is. Paul George sort of is, and while Paul George is more complimentary as a whole, Joel, now that it has been announced that he will miss the Wizards game, has played 13 of a possible 35 games this season. That just is not good enough from a star player, and something that Maxey specifically is feeling the effects of. To point that out exactly, to look at his stats with and without Joel Embiid this season, across the 10 games that they have played together, that he's averaged just 23 points per game, 6.6 assists, and 44.1% from the field. Without Joel, he's averaging 26.7 points per game, 5.1 assists, shooting 41.3% from the field. And it is that efficiency number that I particularly wanted to hit on or really mention here, that to me, what my eyes are seeing with Maxey is there's no doubt about what a talent he is, but it's also so crystal clear how much he benefits from the gravity that Joel Embiid commands. Shots are just much easier when there's a player commanding the level of defensive attention that Embiid does on an every play basis, and it does feel like every single shot is more difficult for Tyrese when Joel is off the floor. Now, to address Tyrese's output as a whole this year, it's tough to complain about the numbers. He's still producing 25.4 points per game, 5.6 assists, 3.3 rebounds, shooting 42.1% from the field and 34.5% from three. While that is still not up to Maxey's standard, it is moving in the right direction. And to kind of lay out the year-by-year breakdown, it is mostly the efficiency numbers that I wanted to mention once again. From the field overall for his career, a 46.2% shooter. So far this year, just 42.1%. From beyond the three-point arc specifically, over the course of his career, he's shooting 38.8% from three, just 34.5% this season. Now, that is moving in the right direction. He was below 30% for a good portion of this year, and happy to see that moving. Obviously, coming back and returning to what we would expect from him. This is the same Tyrese Maxey that shot 43.4% over the course of the season on 6.2 long-range shots per game. So I understand that there is increased efficiency this year, but to me, this is about like the process of creating those shots. Now, as far as the basketball takeaways, there's plenty we can dive into as far as I think he could be used a little bit more in an off-ball fashion, things like that, building chemistry with Joel Embiid and Paul George. But really what brought me to record this, it is how Maxey's handling himself, that there is this clear-cut frustration from him on the court constantly. Now, granted, I get everyone is frustrated by the current state of the team, but why it's so startling to me is it's such like a direct, so different from what we would expect to be the case from Tyrese Maxey. This is the dude that is constantly smiling. You can never get him off his best day, and that has not been the version of Tyrese that has been on the floor. So why is this the case? I mentioned losing already. There's also the contract factor. That money comes with expectation in the NBA, and Tyrese gained quite a bit of each this offseason. That he did sign that max contract, making $35 million this season. He's got still plenty more years to come, 37 next year, 40 mil the following, 43 the year after that, and 46 million in the 28-29 season. That is a lot of money for any human being and any basketball player specifically. So is there the standpoint of Tyrese trying to show he's taking things more seriously, be a little bit more focused? Because there is this fine line between guys that obviously play with freedom and play with a positivity and guys that aren't taking it serious. And I think there is something to the case of Tyrese wanting it to be clear that he has that killer instinct in him, that he's not afraid of the big moments. And we all know that he is not. That is not remotely what I'm on here to say. We've seen him elevate this team in the Knicks series, looking like the Sixers' best player for stretches, really taking this team home in the fourth quarter. But that has not been the case really this year. That the production has not translated to what the numbers would indicate. That a lot of times these feel, I don't want to say like empty statistic performances, but I don't feel Tyrese Maxey swinging the game the way I did in past years. Now, granted, this is coming off the night after the loss to the Phoenix Suns here, recording this before the Wizards game here. And in that game, Maxey finished with 31 points, 10 assists, 6 made three-pointers, and it didn't feel like that good of a game to me. Now, granted, it was a mess of a performance from this entire Sixers team, so I don't want to excuse that or, brush that over, that it obviously was not just a Tyrese Maxey issue. Frankly, shout out to Kelly Oubre for showing up the way he did once again. The reality is there's a lot of issues with this team. But if they do want to get back on the right track, it involves Tyrese Maxey getting back, figuring things out himself. I've also seen the theories, and shout out to DJ Eastwood. I don't want to dive into this too deep, but portraying that some of the off-court kind of situation of him hanging with the new girlfriend and that changing things, that has certainly become relevant, as well as we do have, of course, the reports of him, being together with Bryce Young's ex-girlfriend there. I don't want to talk about any of the off-court stuff, as obviously everyone has things going on. But the reality is the version of Tyrese Maxey that was on the floor or has been a part of this Sixers organization for the past few seasons has not looked like the guy that has been on the floor this year. That too often we've seen Tyrese Maxey complaining about whistles, complaining about the referees, and just not playing basketball in the way that we expect him to. Now, as far as the foul conversation, I feel his pain. That I do think Tyrese Maxey has one of the worst whistles in the entire NBA, and perhaps even more frustrating than that is that it is the inconsistencies of the whistle that make it so frustrating. It's not that he just doesn't get calls, it's that you can never predict when those calls are coming and when they're not. And for Tyrese, I think he honestly does himself a bit of a disservice for just how fast that he is, the rate that he attacks the paint. It just, in a blink of an eye, he's at the rim and trying to lay it up, to the point where he's not like James Harden or one of these Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who are constantly being calculated in their movement, where they are allowing the defender to make contact with them, freezing up in front of him. Jalen Brunson is a guy who has clearly perfected it. Those are guys that understand how to get to the line. Tyrese isn't there yet, but I think he needs to do better as far as his manipulation of his change of pace, slowing up, creating contact himself. But the reality is they should be fouls when they're fouls, and that is not the case with Tyrese Maxey all the time. Now, with that being said, still not an excuse that I need focus on the court, and we have not got that consistently. I think for the Sixers team to truly reach its peak, it needs Tyrese Maxey to have a little bit of that positivity, that we saw the benefit from having him and a guy like Jared McCain. And frankly, look at the contrast between Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. Again, Tyrese has been this voice of positivity, this picture of just absolute good vibes since he has been in Philadelphia. Think about how stark the contrast has been this year between what we've seen from Maxey and what was seen from Jared McCain. Now, McCain is obviously an exception to the rule here. You will find very few human beings on this earth that have a brighter smile or a better personality or, better vibes than Jared McCain there. But I will say that did surprise me. And I do wonder if that feeds into it a little bit with Maxey as well, because there's been so much talk about, Jared McCain being up next, or this team being so focused on Joel Embiid and Paul George. It almost feels like he has slipped through the cracks a little bit as far as expectations and what the hopes are for him as a player. I still have full faith in Tyrese Maxey. I still think he's going to be an all-star this year. Still think he will be many years coming. I think this is only the start of the best version of him as a basketball player, but it does feel like we've gotten a little bit off the track of what his trajectory of growth should be at this point. That should be pretty up top with what the goal should be of the Sixers team from here. Whether they can continue to dig out of this goal and up the standings is another conversation, but it's going to take Tyrese Maxey playing a part of it if that is going to be the case, and it's going to take the other stars being a huge part of it as well. So a lot of issues within the Sixers team, but you got to find Tyrese Maxey to get his spark back. If this Sixers organization and the curses that surround it have ruined another young prospect, a guy that if Tyrese Maxey has lost that belief in himself or that positivity, we're going to have a whole sage burning session of this entire Sixers organization here. So hopefully that is not the case, but I do want to hear from you guys if you've seen the same thing as me. Does it feel like Tyrese Maxey has approached things differently this year? It does feel that there's an anger and a little frustration that he's playing the game with that I simply have not seen from him in past years. And I also will note, as far as the on-court product, I've seen a little bit of speculation. He's clearly put on a ton of muscle. He's definitely gained some weight since being in the NBA, and in the right way, that you can see the definition and, what he has on his body. I do think that's incredibly helpful for attacking the paint, but it does wonder if it did impact his jumper slightly. It does feel like, the ball doesn't come off his hand quite the same way. It's too early in the year for me to be full panicking about any of these things, but would love to hear any of your guys' theories below. I do think there's something to that Maxey not playing like himself, and that him returning to that would be directly positive to this Sixers organization. So drop those thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and one of you guys tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.